What's going on today, Internet? Selfish here with Retrospect. Recently, we reviewed a handheld, the RG43H Pro, and I said that this is a well-performing handheld, but it does look a little bit childish. It's really for that beginner in the space, and that beginner probably being a little bit smaller. Well, the same company came out with a new handheld, the RG43V Pro, which is really made more for adults. It fits within that R36S cloning space, except for this one here packs a few more features, and it's going to put out a little bit more of a punch. Something I think a lot of you will really enjoy. Let's take a look. Before I get going, this RG43V Pro was sent to me for the purpose of review. No money exchanged hands, and all opinions are of my own. They will not see this video before you do. Also, if you want to pick one of these up, links will be down in my thingamabob. Now let's get this thing rolling. Now it's time for us to play our favorite game over here at Retrospect. What's in the box? That would be really cool if I had a bunch of people cheering in the background. All right, so the box here, pretty much like all of these boxes. It does have some weight to it because it is a little bit bigger of a handheld. But yeah, we got that going for us. So we will get her out of here. So right up on top, we do have an origami accordion. Pretty sweet. This one does here tell you some of the systems that it is known to be able to play. It doesn't list a ton of them, about half of them probably. So you got some more that you can play that are not even listed on here. It also talks about your charging instructions and how to change language. So pretty good. Keep that around if you can't figure out how to change language. It also does come with a screen cover. It is acrylic too. It's a really thin acrylic, but it's still an acrylic screen cover. Just getting one is nice. I think that's awesome when companies do that. We do have the handheld, and then we also do have a USB-A to USB-C charger right here. So we have a USB-A to C right there. So put that back in there. Get rid of this stuff. Set this all aside and say, whoopah! There it is. Here is our RG36V Pro. I'll get this stuff off the table here real quick, and we'll get moving right along. All right, let's go through the specs of this device here real quick. This is running Linux Emulation. It also does have RGBox, which is a second operating system, which is also offered on this, as well as the RG52 Mini that they came out with a couple of months ago, and we do have a video on the channel for that too, also down in the thingamabob. But this here is running Linux. It is a 4.3-inch IPS display with a resolution of 1024 by 768, which does make it a 4.3 resolution. It is using a Rockchip 3562. So that 3562 does give it a little bit more performance over some of those R36S devices that you see flooding the market. It's also running a Mali G62 2EE GPU. It does have 1 gig of RAM and 4 gigs of internal storage, and it does have Hall effect joysticks, which I think is pretty fantastic for a device in this price range. You do get Wi-Fi connectivity at 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, as well as a single cavity audio speaker. In your I/O here, you do have USB-C, you do have a 3.5 jack, and you do have room for a micro SD card. And by room, I mean there's a hole for a micro SD card. The battery is 4,000 milliamp hours, and you do get a micro SD card that can take up to a 512 gigabyte card, so you can pretty much fit every retro game into one handheld if you want to. I know you own a big library, so that's a good place to start. Well, I have your attention. Let's go through the I/O here real quick. We'll start at the top like we always do. You do have your 3.5 hole for your audio, a DC hole, which is an OTG hole as well. I don't know why they don't label their OTG holes, but this is an OTG hole. You do have HDMI out with a mini HDMI, and then you do have your TF or micro SD hole right here to put all your games and what have-nots on there. We'll go to the back next, which is still kind of the top anyways because of where these are sitting. But you do have your R2, L2, R1, L1 triggers here on the back. They're not overly loud like some of these devices are. They are loud still, but they're not loud like some of the other devices are that kind of fit within the same caliber. You do have a booty on this thing. It does have some pretty good bumps. They are less than a lot of the other handhelds, and that does actually make this handheld more comfortable, which is great. And then something other handhelds don't have in this space is a kickstand. So that is located on the back here as well. Similar to the original Switch kickstand, except for it comes out of the middle instead of off to the side. So you probably will be less likely to break this one. Don't quote me on that. On the left-hand side over here, we do have our volume up and down. Pretty basic over there. On our right-hand side over here, we do have our power and reset switches right there. On the bottom here, we don't have anything except for the ability to see some of that booty on the bottom. On the front here, we do have our 4.3-inch IPS display. We do have select and start, both on micro switches. These are clicky, obviously, and a function key right here in the middle. And then there is our single cavity front firing speaker. We do have a D-pad, which is okay. It's not crazy, but it does have a decent pivot on it, and it's much better than something like this where it had a round pad on there. Here you do get a full D-pad. Also with your buttons here, they do stick up a little bit, which is kind of nice. You don't have to worry about them getting stuck underneath or anything like that, and they do play very well. They're actually kind of comfortable to lay your thumbs on. Outside of that, we do have our dual Hall effect joysticks right here in the middle with their RGB rings that do go around the outside of them. Let's see that display a little bit better even. Look at that. So I think that some of the things that are worth mentioning here are definitely the Hall effect joysticks. That is an upgrade I make to all the R36S style devices if I'm going to be carrying them around for any amount of time. Just because the joysticks they tend to come with in a lot of these clones are not very accurate. It's not because I think they're going to wear out in the amount of time that I'm going to use them, but their accuracy typically is a little jaded, we'll say. There's definitely an advantage of putting Hall effect joysticks in them. For one, they're relatively cheap, and then also it just feels better. Like the feel of the joysticks is better. Now, one of the issues I do have with this device is that these joysticks are too close together. Your thumbs actually hit when you're using both of them at the same time. But the good thing is because of the games you're going to be playing on here, you probably won't be likely to be using this right stick a whole lot, so you won't have to worry about that. As far as comfort goes, though, this thing is extremely comfortable. Like I said, with the little bit of raise that you have here on the face buttons and the D-pad, it actually makes the device more comfortable just with where your hands are sitting. And then these back buttons are a little bit easier to push than most of them are. So it can be obnoxious sometimes, but then it also can be at your advantage at other times. But luckily, they're not as loud as some of the others. And this booty on the back here actually gives you a perfect spot for your middle fingers, just to kind of crouch around it, but not feel like you're overstretching. And because it is a 4:3 screen, your hands are not touching on the back, which is a nice little feature as well. And with that, when you're in this position where you're going to be gaming, that front firing speaker is wide open, something like you'd see on the RG43V where it's centered really well. So it's coming right at you. Way better than something like this where the speaker is on the back, so everybody else can hear it but you. We are actually getting that advantage. I hate to compare it against their own device, but at the end of the day, like, this is a good device for children and things like that. I mean, it is powerful enough. It does play the games you'd want it to play. I just think that this is a more refined device, and it is really an upgrade to the R36S line of devices. They've done a really good job here of creating what feels like the next step. Kind of something not necessarily for all beginners, but maybe for more enthusiasts that are just getting into the retro handheld space, aren't ready to drop hundreds of dollars on a handheld, but they do want something a little bit nicer than some of the introductory devices. I'd still consider it more of an introductory or beginner device, but it does have a faster processor. You are able to play PlayStation, PSP, Dreamcast, and some N64 on here. Most of those libraries will play, and a lot of those games you'll actually be able to up the resolution on, which is pretty fantastic for a device like this, if you don't mind me saying so. And if you did, I wouldn't know until you leave it in the comments. But let me know down there if you mind me saying so. But overall, the fit and feel of this is really good. It's a softer plastic than we normally see too. This is the first device of theirs that's felt like this. They did make the R36T, the TV version, or the one that has the CRT style bubble on the front of it. That is also another device from the same company. This is the best feeling device out of all the devices that they have. And I've spent a lot of time, about a week and a half of just using this along with whatever x86 handheld I'm carrying that day. I've been carrying this instead of any of my other handhelds. At first, I thought I was forcing myself because I wanted to review it real quick, but then I actually started to enjoy it and decided I wanted to hold on to it for a while until I kind of worked my way through all my feels about it. Now with this kickstand here on the back, I don't know what it is about it, but it really changes the game here. I wish all handhelds had a kickstand. You know, you're looking at this like, this is ridiculous. You're not going to play games like this. And you're absolutely correct. I would not play games like this. Well, maybe I would. It really depends on what kind of mood I'm in. But this is great if you want to hook up a controller, as well as you can put this to a monitor with your HDMI out. So you could be playing on a monitor. Now, unfortunately, we don't have Bluetooth in this device. Either have to use a dongle through the OTG port for your controller, or you're going to have to run it wired off of there, which is the way that I was testing it on, and it worked just fine, and hooking up to a monitor. I just feel like it gives you a little bit more, especially if you want to consoleize it. You're not just like setting this down on the table and like wires are sticking out everywhere. You know, you actually have something that you're able to set it up nicely. It looks nice, it looks clean, and that's pretty awesome as far as I'm concerned. And that kickstand, when you're done with it, just clips right in. All right, so now that we're in here, this is the normal Emulate front end that you see on a lot of these devices, kind of in this price range. Emulate just seems to be what everybody kind of gravitates towards. Now, AISLPC actually did do something on their website. If you go to their download section, I can't remember, it's either download or firmware, on their website, you can actually download third-party firmwares from their website. So if there was a version of Rocknix for this, for example, they would have a link to the Rocknix GitHub so you could download Rocknix. And that's pretty cool. You don't see that that from a lot of these manufacturers, and they do that right there on their corporate website. If you're thinking, oh, I want to get that, but I don't want that OS, and if it's not on there yet, which this device isn't listed on there yet, but it's new, so give it a couple weeks, because some of the devices I've recently looked at for them that are only a few weeks or a couple months old are already on there. So just give it a little bit of time. It will pop up on there at some point in time, I would imagine. But here with our Emulate, it runs just like Emulate normally does. Our function button here actually does sort of work. It's going to open our side menu here, but if you hit start, you are going to get into that regular menu you normally would with Emulate, and you can change all your settings in here, including your LED brightness and all that kind of stuff around here. I don't want to get too into the weeds here with Emulate because it's just such a common operating system, and I've gone over it so many times that you could watch any other video of mine and you probably find something new that I go over with Emulate, because I just change it every time. But make sure that you go in here, you set your themes and things like that the way you want. So this is the retro TV theme, which tends to be what this company puts on everything because they make the retro TV handhelds. Outside of the settings, if you do need to get into some more of the nitty gritty, this one also does have that setup folder where you can go in and make changes on here as well. So fun stuff all the way around. And this will give you access to your folders if you need to move ROMs around or anything like that. You do have the file manager on here. You also can put Portmaster on this device so you can play your ports. Portmaster is fantastic. Between Portmaster and Pico 8, I could probably get away with not even have to install any of these other systems and just play cool ports and Pico games all the time, and I would be happy as a clam. Now, when we get out of here, again, we do have these systems that are pre-installed on here. These are ones that do have games on them. I did add some Dreamcast games because there wasn't any Dreamcast games on here, so I threw a couple on here just for my testing purposes. I mean, pretty easy to do. I've got a pretty extensive library. If you don't have one yet, you will have one at some point in time after you legally rip your own games onto your computer so you're able to use them on emulation handhelds. And then you'll be able to continue on with every handheld you use going forward. One more thing I wanted to show you on here is if you do hold the power button, you can get over to RG Box, which looks a lot like the Ambernic front end that you'd get if you're not running a third-party software or front end on it. But there is one main reason why people would probably want to go over there, and that is because there is a downloads area where you can go and find games to download onto the device. So if you don't have access to a computer, this might be the way that you'd want to do it. Now, I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell everybody when they get one of these devices. Doesn't matter what manufacturer they're from, unless they're actually a manufacturer using good memory cards, which they do go through spouts. So if that's the case, then maybe, okay, so not every time. But anyways, get a new memory card, put your own memory card in here. It's going to last you longer. It's probably going to play faster too, which will give you more access to better systems. So that's my word of advice. If you don't have access to a computer, unfortunately, it's really hard to put ROMs on one of these devices without a computer. So if you are doing that, upgrading your memory card, and you don't have access to a computer, you may find this helpful. Let's go with that. That would be the time that you would want this to be helpful for you. I am not going to tell you what to do. You are an adult or a child. It's between you and yourself. You make those kind of decisions. If this is what you want to do and this is the way you want to get your games, by all means. It's, again, not really my business. But in here, you would be able to get those anyways. But other than that, you do have this where it looks a lot like you would see your Ambernic devices. So I don't have any applications installed on here, but if we go to games, we're going to see these same kind of game folders that we would see on an Ambernic. It plays just fine over here. Emulate just is more fluent, which is why they put Emulate on devices, which is why I usually show these off with the Emulate that's already on there. But this RG Box, I think, is their own OS. I haven't seen this OS anywhere else. I mean, it really is kind of a copy of Ambernic's, but it works well. We're not seeing, though, here where we have game, we don't have a separate one for RetroArch, which is what you'd see on an Ambernic device, which makes me think that this actually isn't forked from Ambernic, and this is something different. But I could be wrong. If you know better, let me know. Under your settings, you do have those same options here as you did on the other. It's just they're in here a little bit differently. You don't have the Portmaster options and things like that under the settings here. But if you do it in Emulate, you do have the option to move it over here into this application folder. So then you would be able to see Portmaster and all of that. Unless you find this as your one and done, which I could see some people finding this as their one and done. If you really just want to play up to PlayStation, this thing is fantastic. And even for the fact that you get some PSP, some Dreamcast, and some N64 on here, it just makes this have a little bit more value as far as I'm concerned. So you get that plus those Hall sticks. You just have a little more powerful of a device than a lot of the ones that look like this on the market. There was PSP games on here already. I don't remember if I put N64 on here or not. I know I thought about it. No, not on this card. I've got two different cards I was using, so this one doesn't have N64 on it, unfortunately, but it does play on this device pretty well. N64 emulates very well on a lot of these lower power devices. The rack chips do good with that console, so you should be good to go there. Mostly, I think we're just going to play some games on here. like we have been, and we will kind of go over a wrap up at the end. Hopefully I'm able to answer any questions you might have with this, but we're just going to do a quick game showcase just to kind of give you a feel for it. So we probably aren't going to have any N64 on there unless I break out this filming some more, because it's been multiple days, and then put some N64 on there. But here we go. So we'll go through some games and then we'll talk about it. After spending a little over a week and a half with the RG43V, I really actually kind of enjoy this device. It has got a good build quality, which we're not seeing in a lot of these clones anymore. They seem to be getting cheaper and cheaper as people or companies are trying to set themselves apart so that theirs looks or acts or presents a different way than the other ones in this kind of clone category are looking, because they're all using the same SoC. They're all using the same buttons. There's about 5 different displays they use, but they all use the same name. They all say game console on the back, just like this one does. It says game console on the back, so it's fitting right into the family. But game console doesn't make this though. This is made by AISLPC, but this has a more powerful SoC with that 3562. This also has Hall effect joysticks. I mean, there's a lot more here. And then of course, that beautiful kickstand on the back of it. So I really am enjoying this device, other than the few things I said earlier that I'm not a huge fan of, like the fact that your thumbs, they hit when you try to use both your thumbs at the same time. But you're not playing Ape Escape on here, so I'm really struggling to think of what games you would need both joysticks for anyways. I think it'd be few and far between. Maybe in some N64 games you could probably get away with it and use it as your C-stick, but you know, you have to make those decisions, I guess, as you go along. But as far as fit and finish, this thing is really nice. The seams fit well, which is really surprising in this price category. I'm really kind of blown away by the quality of this in comparison to some of the other devices, especially in comparison to this RG43H Pro that is like its little sister or big brother or whatever. This one here is a completely different quality of handheld. In fact, it matches pretty much everything else I've looked at from this company. Maybe even a little bit better. This might be their best quality one yet. Maybe sitting right next to the RG52 Mini. But if you're asking me, should you pick up this device? If you are in the market for a kind of a beginner or an enthusiast type of device, you really can't go wrong by picking this up, unless you're trying to play like PS2 and GameCube. But if you're trying to play some actual retro systems, I think that this is a really good way to go. Absolutely. And there is a link down in the thingamabob if you want to pick one up. I'll throw a link over to Amazon, which is where this one came from, and I'll try to find a couple other links for you. But the Amazon one last time I checked was the cheapest anyways, but that changes on almost a daily basis at this time of the year. So we'll see what I can find for you. But yeah, I would recommend this, especially anybody that's just getting into the hobby, that's, you know, trying to find something that's going to be reliable, has a bigger screen. That's a big thing. You know, you don't have to squint to look at a 3.5 inch screen. This really kind of nails all that stuff right out of the park. But that's all I got for today. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, share this video with your friends, because sharing is caring. It also helps grow the channel. Once you're done with all that paperwork I just asked you to do, there will be a couple of videos here at the end of this video that YouTube's going to recommend to you based off your algorithm. So I would check them out. I think it's going to be something you're going to like. But that's all I got for today. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.